It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, the Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, General Said Shinkriha, said that the army would make further efforts to take up to the challenges of the ongoing period. The French National Assembly today approved a motion for the resolution condemning the bloody and murderous repression of Algerian committed on the 17th of October 1961 in Paris, during which hundreds of peaceful demonstrators were massacred. The UN Humanitarian Affairs Office OCHA said over 1.1 million people in Gaza face an extreme level of food insecurity. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Samani. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has congratulated the President-elect of Senegal, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, expressing to him on behalf of the Algerian people and government his sincere wishes for success in the accomplishment of his noble mission, while reaffirming Algeria's willingness to strengthen the ties of friendship and promote bilateral cooperation in the interest of the two brotherly peoples. As you followed in our top stories, the Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, General Said Shinkriha, has paid a working and inspection visit to the Gendarmerie headquarters here in Algiers. Mr. Shinkriha said that the National People's Army, who are aware about the current threats, would make further efforts to take up to the challenges of the ongoing period. Now, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has received a telephone call from the European Union Special Representative for the Sahel, Emanuela Claudia Del Rey. The two parties exchanged views on the latest political, economic and security developments in the Sahel-Saharan region. The chairman of the Arab Inter-Parliamentary Union, Brahim Boughali, has expressed in Geneva the regrets of the Arab geopolitical group of the Inter-Parliamentary Union's failure to adopt an emergency clause included in the agenda of its General Assembly regarding the Palestinian question. More details with Mohamed Khatel.
Brahim Boughali said that the objectives for which the IPU was founded and which it has set itself to achieve in the field of international security and peace now appear to a number of peoples as if they were no longer a priority for the rest of the representatives of the peoples of the world. At the close of the 148th IPU General Assembly, Mr. Boughali recalled what is happening in Palestine, the massacres and all forms of genocide, with the support and cover of countries claiming to be working for international peace and security, underlining that this has already happened in other countries, such as Afghanistan and Iraq, which were destroyed after being attacked on the basis of false arguments. Brahim Boughali called for the need to review the current global system and to re-examine the practices applied by the UN, which have undermined the noble objectives for which it was created and have caused it to lose its true value. Mr. Boughali has held talks in Geneva with the Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Botswana, Fandu Skilimani, devoted to ways and means to strengthen bilateral relations between the two countries through cooperation in various areas. And Mr. Boughali has also met in Geneva with the Speaker of the Upper House of the Irish Parliament, Jerry Buttimer, accompanied by an important parliamentary delegation. The two sides discussed issues of common interest, notably the situation in the Sahel, the Palestinian cause, and the conflict in Ukraine.
The French National Assembly today approved a motion for a resolution condemning the bloody and murderous repression of Algerians committed under the authority of the head of police, Maurice Papon, on the 17th of October 1961 in Paris, during which hundreds of peaceful demonstrators were massacred. Algeria's representative at the UN Security Council has reaffirmed the country's unwavering commitment to the full implementation of the Resolution 1540 aimed at eliminating or preventing the proliferation of nuclear, chemical or biological weapons in order to promote international stability.
My country recognizes the critical importance of preventing the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction to non-state actors. Algeria commends the 1540 Committee for its tireless efforts in promoting the universal implementation of the resolution. We appreciate the committee's work in engaging with member states, providing assistance and fostering international cooperation to strengthen national capacities in preventing the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Algeria reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the full implementation of Resolution 1540 and to the global non-proliferation regime. Algeria looks forward to continued collaboration and progress in the year ahead as we work together to create a safer and more secure world for all.
South Africa's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Naledi Pandor, said that the International Criminal Court should already have issued an arrest warrant against the Zionist leader Netanyahu for war crimes committed against Palestinians in Gaza. She also raised the issue of the genocide charge brought by South Africa against the Zionist entity before the International Court of Justice, pointed out that her country had lived through an experience similar to that of the Palestinian people and that it is firmly committed to the struggle for freedom and human rights. More than 200 school buildings have been directly affected by the attacks carried out by the Zionist occupation forces since the 7th of October against the Gaza Strip, the UN deplored in a report published on Wednesday, according to a recent assessment of the United Nations education sector in Gaza. 212 school buildings have been directly affected, which represents 37% of the total number of schools affected out of the 563 school buildings in the Palestinian enclave. The previous assessment in mid-February reported 162 school buildings directly affected. Said Bouazi has more details.
Analysis of satellite data revealed that at least 53 schools had been totally destroyed, 27 more schools than in the previous period. According to UN humanitarian agencies, a further 38 schools lost at least half of their structures. According to the UN report, some 228,000 pupils and more than 8,550 teachers had their schools directly affected by the Zionist hostilities. This satellite damage assessment exercise shows that more than 80% of schools have suffered varying degrees of damage to their buildings. Nearly 60% of the school buildings used by displaced persons as shelters are either directly affected or damaged. In addition, 57% or 107 of the school buildings of the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees UNRWA were directly affected or damaged. Government schools were also targeted by the Zionist raids. The report also shows that northern Gaza was the worst hit, with 86% of its school buildings directly hit or damaged, followed by the Governorate of Gaza with 81% of all its school buildings. More generally, the report points out that 17 years of blockade combined with the Zionist aggression have damaged and destroyed an already fragile educational infrastructure, increasing the pressure on schools. The recent hostilities in Gaza have tragically led to a large number of attacks on schools, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian situation. As a result of this destruction, at least 67% of the schools in Gaza will require a complete rebuild or major rehabilitation to be operational again, according to the UN. The publication of this document comes at a time when, despite the call for a ceasefire in Gaza, the Zionist forces have continued their aggression, notably in the area of Rimel, near the Eshifa hospital in the city of Gaza, in the center of Khan Yunis, and near El Amal and Nasser hospitals in Khan Yunis.
Qatar has condemned the decision by the Zionist entity to seize 8,000 dunams of land from Palestinian citizens in the Jordan Valley in the occupied West Bank in favor of colonial expansion, underlining its refusal to undermine the rights of the Palestinian people. In a statement, the Qatari Ministry of Foreign Affairs said Qatar condemns in the strongest terms the occupation's announcement of the confiscation of land in the Jordan Valley region in the occupied Palestinian territories. It considers this to be an extension of the systematic occupation policy aimed at expanding the settlements forcibly displacing the Palestinian people and depriving them of their rights. The UN Humanitarian Affairs Office OCHA said over 1.1 million people in Gaza face an extreme level of food insecurity. OCHA took to their official page on X to say that access impediments persist and time is running out. It said, there is no alternative to the large-scale delivery of aid by land to have enough aid to save lives. The UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, who has stated that there are grounds to believe that the Zionist entity has committed several acts of genocide in Gaza, has said that she has received threats but has no intention to resign.
Been a difficult time. I've been attacked since the very beginning of my mandate. I don't say that it's been a pleasant journey, but I can tell you it's much more. I mean, most of the pain comes from where I have to observe and monitor and investigate day by day. Yeah, I do receive threats. Nothing that so far I have considered needing extra precautions. Pressure, yes. And it doesn't change either my commitment or the results of my work, I think.
Ireland has announced its intention to bring charges before the International Court of Justice against Israel for perpetrating a genocide in the Gaza Strip and to support South Africa's case against the same Zionist entity. The details in this report by Said Bouazi.
Announcing this decision, the Irish minister said that even if the International Court will decide whether or not a genocide has taken place, he wishes to make it clear that what is happening in Gaza is now a blatant violation of international humanitarian law on a massive scale, reports the Weather News Agency. He added the deliberate denial of humanitarian aid to civilians, the targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure, the indiscriminate use of explosive materials in populated areas, the use of civilian facilities for military purposes, and the collective punishment of an entire people, and the list goes on. This must stop. The international community's position is clear. The Irish minister did not mention the form that the intervention would take, nor did he specify what argument or proposal his country intended to put forward, but he added that this step had been determined following a legal and political analysis and consultation with a number of partners, including South Africa. The Martin administration stated that such third-party interventions do not take a specific side in the conflict, but that the intervention would be an opportunity for Ireland to present its interpretation of one or more of the provisions of the Genocide Convention at issue in the case, says WAFA. After denouncing the Zionist entity for committing a veritable genocide in Gaza last February, South Africa asked the ICJ in early March to issue a new order for genocide against the Zionist entity. In a motion filed last Wednesday, South Africa alerted the international community on the famine in Gaza and asked the judges to order an end to the Zionist aggression against the Palestinians in Gaza. Pretoria has also once again accused the Zionist entity of violating the Genocide Convention. Dying of hunger in Gaza is no longer a risk, it is a reality, writes South Africa in its motion to the ICJ.
The U.S. State Department official resigned today in protest at the Biden administration's support for the Zionist entity that has been waging a savage aggression against the Gaza Strip since the 7th of October 2023. Anel Shalin, 38, resigned in the middle of her 2-year contract with the U.S. State Department as Foreign Affairs Officer in the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor. The head of the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ms. Bintou Keita, said in the eastern DRC the situation is marked by an intensification of the fighting and the deteriorating security and humanitarian situation. Speaking to reporters, Keita has this to say.
M23 continues to make significant advances and expansion of its territory to unprecedented levels. This has culminated in an even more disastrous humanitarian situation, with internal displacement reaching unparalleled numbers. We must collectively pay more attention to the deepening humanitarian crisis stemming from the M23 escalation in North Kivu and prolonged armed violence in Ituri and South Kivu. More than 7.1 million people are internally displaced in eastern DRC, an increase of 800,000 since my last briefing some 3 months ago. 23.4 million people are food insecure, which means that 1 in 4 Congolese faces hunger and malnutrition, making the Democratic Republic of Congo the country most affected by food insecurity.
She stated this humanitarian catastrophe requires a strong response from the international community. The 2024 humanitarian response plan remains underfunded. Now, Algeria is hosting tomorrow, Friday, the Palestine Cinema Days, which will be held at the Cinema Theatre Hall here in Algiers, with a special tribute paid to martyr Palestinian film director Wala Saada, who was killed by the Zionist occupation. To speak about the event, we have the pleasure to host Palestinian film director and board member of the Shashat Women's Cinema, Nada Khalifa, who is the guest of the Algerian radio.
Nada Khalifa, good morning.
Good morning.